Erev Tov, good evening. L'Shana Tova Umtuka is the well-known greeting which we exchange from Rosh Hashanah through Yom Kippur. But as we approach Yom Kippur, there's a deeper and more profound greeting. The greeting associated with Yom Kippur, not only L'Shana Tova, but something more heartfelt is Gamar Chatima Tova. Gamar means completely. Chatima means sealed. Tova means for good, for goodness. It is our deepest wish that you and all your loved ones be completely sealed in the book of life, the book of health, the book of peace, the book of patience, the book of gentle internal strength for you and all your loved ones in this year beginning this past week. And in a moment, we shall begin Col Nidre, and you are asked to don a talis or talit if you have one. The only night of the year when we put on a talis for the evening service, because the heavens themselves are open to the majesty of this season. The heavens, the earth, the mountains, the rivers, the lakes, the animal life, according to a midrash, are all quaking at this moment, for everyone is standing in the presence of God to be examined, to be scrutinized. So hopefully you have a talit at this time. And the last two words are lahit teif b'tzitzit, which literally means to enwrap oneself in the tzitzit. And of course the tzitzit are at the very edge of the garment. And I wonder what it means to wrap oneself in the tzitzit, when the fabric, of course, is the body of the talis. And I answer my own question by saying the tzitzit, the fringes are at the corner. They're at the edge, the periphery. And when we enwrap ourselves in an awareness of reaching out to those on the edge, the periphery, we're fulfilling the mitzvah of tzitzit and of talit. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshana b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu litatef b'tzitzit. And in a moment, we begin welcoming Yehuda Silverwolf, who adds incredibly to our services throughout the year. And we begin the service with Shalom Rav, a prayer for great peace, peace for the members of our congregation, our community, and beyond. And imagine peace going out from every synagogue across this nation, across the world, and enveloping everyone across the surface of the globe. And now, Shalom Rav from our own Yehuda Silverwolf.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amha Tasim Le'olam. Ki ata hu melech hador B'chol ha'shalom. Ki ata hu melech hador B'chol ha'shalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amha Tasim Le'olam. Tov enecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael bechol ez ubechol sham Ishlomecha. Shalom Rav
And if you have a Machzor, we'll be turning to the Col Nidre in just a moment on page 205. And if you do not have a Machzor, you're invited to open your heart and your thoughts to a prayer that goes back 800, 900 years. And traditionally, when we were all in synagogue together, all the Torah scrolls come out onto the bima. And we, the members of the synagogue, become part of a community. The Torah scrolls and human beings, a blended element. But tonight, we're not able to do so. And so first, I introduce you to a Torah that was saved from the destruction of the Nazis. This Torah came to our synagogue in the early 1980s from Prague. And it's emblematic of the purest and the most righteous of all driving forces, love and seeking law and justice. And that will always triumph over forces that bring forth cruelty and racism and domineering and hate couched in any form. And she stands here. And now we also open the Aron. To the sixth Sifrei Torah, which have been part of Ahavas Chesed since its origins, going back to 1894. 126 years we've been together, this community. And even a pandemic, which has temporarily kept many people in their homes, will not halt a community gathering in prayer and in hope, in study, in love, and in seeking. And now Esther Borlevin introduces us in just a moment with a bit of a prelude to our high holiday cantor, Dr. Howard Horowitz, who will be leading us in the Col Nidre. Again, if you have a Machzor on page 205, if you're able to rise for at least a moment or two, you are requested to do so. If you must be seated thereafter, it is understood.
Col Nidre v'yisarei v'charamei v'konamei v'chinuyei v'kinusei u'shvuot din daharna udishtabana U'diacharimna v'dasarna al nafshatana miyom kippurim ezeh ad yom kippurim haba וטובה, כולו נחרטנה והון, כולו יהון שרן, שביעיקין, שביעיתין, בתהילין מבוטלין, לשרירין, ללא קיימין, נדרנה, לא נדרה, ויסהרנה, לא יסהרה, ושבועתנו לשבועות.
A number of years ago, this is Esther Borlova.
כל
No.
Col Nidre, Vesare, Vacharame, Vekoname, Vechinuye, Vekinuse, Ushvuot, Dindarna, Dishtabana, Udiacharim na Vedasarna. al nafshatana miyom kippurim ezeh ad yom kippurim haba aleinu letova kulho nichrat navehon kulhon yehon sharon shavitin v'tehelin u'muvutalin la shririn v'lo kayamin niderana la nidre ve'asaharana la yasaharei ushvuatana la shevuot.
And our Chazan leads us in Vinislach and Slachna and Vayomer in the center of page 205.
V'nislach lechol adat b'nei Yisrael v'lager hagar b'tocham ki lechoham b'ishkaga selach nalavan hamazek godel chastecha v'chashen asat alam hazeh mimitzrayim v'yad heina v'sham ne'emar Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha.
Across the page in the English before the Shema.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechiyanu v'kihimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh.
Amen. Across the page, the lower English two sentences. Adonai replied, I have forgiven as you have asked. Baruch atah Adonai, our God, ruler of time and space. Blessed are you for granting us life, for sustaining us, and for bringing us to this moment. We are seated. David, can you do light? Light? Have you ever played with Play-Doh or clay? Maybe as a child. I'm sure you've noticed your fingerprints. Anytime you shape the clay, no matter how hard you try, your fingerprints end up appearing on the surface of the clay or the Play-Doh. And if you try to wipe the fingerprints off of the clay without wearing gloves, of course, it's impossible because your fingerprints remain, for your creativity has been invested in the clay. Your fingerprints remain. In Breshit, in the book of Genesis in the Torah, we learn that God shaped the first person out of earth. Like clay, God molded, and then God breathed into that form and life took hold. So the breath of life and the shaping of that clay combined to yield a person. The clay, the earth, the substance, the physical form, the breath, the spiritual aspect. And when I pick up Play-Doh or clay and I see the imprint of my touch on its surface, my fingers have left a fingerprint on the material that I touched. Just as God's fingers have left a mark, a fingerprint on the stuff that God held. So for me, the soul is God's fingerprint left within each and every one of us. Each of you has the fingerprint of God within you. Your soul is God's own touch, or the element, you might call it, the aftertouch of God. Your soul is the evidence that God has fashioned you to be specifically who you are and how you are. Try as you might, you cannot conceal the soul. Try as you might, you cannot remove the evidence of God's place in your life. God's fingerprint is as unique as you are, physically expressed in the uniqueness of your own fingerprints. Your own fingerprints, unique, in some way reflecting God's fingerprint. God's fingerprint also expressed psychically in how you operate. Your soul was entrusted to you by God and is manifest in the most fundamental of all operations of your being, that which you nearly never consider, breathing. For God breathed that first breath, and every breath thereafter has been within a human body, reflective of the soul. Thousands of times per day, as you pause, do you take time, even a moment, to consider the soul, the spirit, which is yours alone? In these days of COVID-19, during which we are attuned to the mechanics of breathing and the avoidance of other breaths, we focus on our own breathing, protecting it, wearing a mask. And our own breathing is a breath transmitted to us from God from the time of Eve and Adam. This is Col Nidre, Yom Kippur. And at this holy hour, all life is judged. Even the cosmos are held accountable. Tonight, you need to view yourself as more than the physical. Open your mind to the exceptionality of the Jewish view that you are more than what you see, much more than what you touch. You are the union of a limited physical being prone to accident and failure, missteps, stumbling and tripping, with the perfection of a soul shared by God, a soul reflecting the element. On this night of Col Nidre, we stand in the presence of Torah scrolls, 6 scrolls testifying to our origins, and 1 scroll testifying to the survival of life beyond the Nazis. Remind yourself of the supreme beauty of your soul and the supreme beauty of the soul of your neighbor, your relative, your coworker, your friend. Picture the uniqueness of God's fingerprints on the stuff of which your friend, your loved one, is made. Now, picture the damage done to God's fingerprints when we lie to someone we love, when we tell an insult, when we speak negatively behind that person's back, or we recount an embarrassing story about her for no good reason, only to laugh at her. We obscure God's fingerprints, which are within someone else, when we act in this manner. When we act cruelly, maliciously, we corrode God's fingerprint and we blur the luster of our soul. When we stand idly by a person harmed physically or emotionally, we do damage to the perfection of God's handiwork, that soul. that fingerprint. But when we celebrate the beauty of a neighbor, a friend, a relative, a coworker, by honoring that person, by seeking to repair the damage done by insults or callous remarks, when we console and tend and share compassion, we restore the splendor of a soul, and the handiwork made by God is made whole. You and I have the power to restore souls. You and I, with simple and sincere gestures of offering apology, of granting forgiveness, become partners with God, and we can take credit for remedying the damage done to God's fingerprints. And there is no limit. For we can touch as many of God's fingerprints as we choose. The only limit to making things right in our world is our own imagination. The only limit to making things right in our world is our own imagination. And this year, a year in which we see a world of pain, of confusion, of upheaval, of pandemic and fire and flood, of suffering and challenge, of families separated from one another, of loved ones behind windows in hospitals and nursing homes. Our imagination in seeing the presence of God's fingerprints is all the more crucial, all the more vital. And it is up to you and me to summon energies that we did not know we had, to imagine that we are in contact with one another, and to make that more than merely fantasy, but it is real. To see the beauty of the touch of God in your own world every single day in this year, and to share that glory with others. This night of Col Nidre, of Erev Yom Kippur, place all of you in a very private and sheltered and beloved place within my heart. And I keep you in all my prayers to imagine greatly your role in repairing this world, which is one step away from near perfection, by tending the souls within your reach, and then reach out one more soul, one more person, in love, in gentleness, in respect, in honor. For that person before you is the aftertouch of God's own hand. And when you reach out, and when you no longer allow limits to be on your imagination, you literally will be holding God's hand as you and many others by you will be walking further into this world. From every part of me, I call forth this prayer, and may you see what an instrument of shalom each one of you can be. And in this manner, may you be inscribed, signed, and sealed in the year ahead. God's blessings upon you all. Amen. Just prior to the Borchu, we bring light into our world, and we're thankful to Danielle Eisen for lighting the Yom Tov, the holiday candles, for us. Light itself is not holy, but God's touch of the light, just as God's touch of all of us, makes us holy and other elements within the universe holy. Now, Lahalik Ner Shel.
Be gracious to the ones I love, and bless them with goodness, with mercy and peace. Oh, hear my prayer to you. Let us light these lights and see the way to you, and let us say Amen. Let us light these lights and see the way to you, and let us say Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu l'chad likner shal yom tov, l'chad likner shal yom tov. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shahachiyanu v'kimanu v'kirgianu l'zman hazeh.
Yishar Koach, Danielle. And now, Borchu, on page 207. If so, capable, please rise in your homes. Borchu on page 207.
Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam evad.
We're seated, the English on page 207. Baruch atah Adonai, our God, ruler of time and space, whose word brings the evening dusk, whose wisdom opens the gates of dawn, whose understanding changes the day's division, whose will sets the succession of seasons and arranges the stars in their places in the sky, who creates day and night, who rolls light before darkness and darkness from light, who makes day pass into night, who distinguishes day from night. Adonai Tzvaot is your name, living and ever-present God. May your rule be with us forever and ever. Baruch atah Adonai, who brings each evening's dusk. Top of page 208, Ahavat Olam.
Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael amcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot chukim u'mishpatim otanu limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shachveinu v'kumeinu nasiach bechukecha ונשמח בדברי תורתך ומצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ובהם נגע יומם ולילה באהבתך Al tasir mimenu le'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai,
Baruch
Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Amen. The Shema, page 208. Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod, Malchuto Le'olam Vaed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol me'odecha. Ve'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayahom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha u'v'lechtecha b'derech u'v'shochbecha u'v'kumecha u'kshartam le'oto yodecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha u'chtavetam al mezuzot beitecha u'v'hisharecha.
The last word.
Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor edaber el bnei Yisrael v'yamarta alehem v'yasu lahem tzitzit al kanfei vigdehem adoratam v'natnu al tzitzit hakanaf petil tachelet v'haya lachem letzitzit uritem oto uzachartem et kol mitzvot Adonai v'asitem otam V'lo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem asher atem zonim achareihem leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim le'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim v'hiyot lachem le'elohim ani Adonai Elohechem emet.
The last word of the Shema is the word emet, sometimes pronounced emes, which means true or truth. When you and I are able to look past the limitations that hold us prisoner, and we can see that there is an ultimate, we are encountering the truth. The Jewish mystics called it the Ein Sof, the without limits, the limitlessness, thus you could translate it. And that's why the Shema ends with emet, seeking an awareness of limitlessness and your and my connection to it. And now you understand the Michamocha, which is on the heels of the Shema. It's on page 210 because the Michamocha is a call forth, not from philosophers, not from rabbis, not from teachers, but from Israelites who had just crossed over the sea and seen that their threats in their own experience were no longer. And they realized that there was something of limitlessness, and they were accessing that. Michamocha.
Michamocha, Ba'elim Adonai, Mikamocha, Nedar v'Kodesh, Nahara Tehilot, Osefele. Shira Chadasha, Shibchu Golim L'Shimcha Al Sfat Hayam, Yachad Kulam Hoduvim Lichu V'Yamru, Adonai Imlahoch Le'olam Evahed, Tzur Yisrael.
And now we're on the very bottom of page 210. V'ne'emar ki fodornu Yaakov u'golam yachad mimenu Baruch Adonai Gal Yisrael. On page 211, the English, the Hashkibenu prior to the Euphros, page 211. Page 211. Allow us, Adonai, our God, to sleep peacefully and to awaken again to life, our sovereign. Spread over us your canopy of peace. Restore us with your good counsel, and save us for the sake of your name. Shield us Remove from us enemies and pestilence, sword, starvation, and sorrow, and remove the evil forces that surround us. Shelter us in the shadow of your wings. For you, God, watch over and deliver us. And you are the sovereign, merciful, and compassionate. Ensure our going and coming for life and peace, now and forever. May you spread over us your canopy of peace. Baruch atah Adonai, who spreads the canopy of peace over us and over all the people of Israel and over Jerusalem. Ufros Aleinu.
Uferos aleinu sukat shelamecha, Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, v'ala kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim.
Chatzi Kaddish on page 212.
Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah Ve'alma divrach irutei V'yamlich malchutei V'chayechon V'yamechon V'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala v'zman kari V'yimeru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Le'olam V'lo Me'almaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach V'yitpar v'yitrama v'yitnaseh V'yitadar v'yitala v'yitalal Shemei dekudesha v'richu Le'yehela le'yehela Mikol birchata v'shirata Tushbechata v'nechemata Da'amiran v'yalama V'yimeru Amen.
If so able, you're requested to rise now. The silent Amida beginning on page 213 through 221. And when you hear the word Amida, you say, oh, I know that prayer. And of course you do, because the beginning and the ending are the same compared to all the other Amidas throughout the entire year. But in the center, there are some modifications. First, there's a paragraph that says, Mekadesh Yisrael, God makes Israel holy, and also Yom Kippur, the day itself holy. So we have something in common. We Jewish people and the day of Yom Kippur have something in common. We're both holy. And also within this passage is the first mention of the Ashamnu and the Al-Chet. And again, some of us are familiar, hopefully, with the Ashamnu, because it's a litany, and every next letter in the Hebrew alphabet is rendered in this poetic presentation of we have fallen short and we have erred and we have done some damage. And al-chet shechatanu means concerning the sin that all of us have performed. And both the ashamnu and the al-chet shechatanu have in common the suffix nu. And in Hebrew, when you hear the sound nu, you know it's we or us or ours, O-U-R-S, like Eloheinu. We're all in this together, especially now when we are at homes and limited in our contact. Understand that the Jewish prayer book sees us as always together. And when we succeed, we all succeed. But if one of us fails, errs, does something wrong, it's a chet, it's a sin, then in some way that influences all of us. And we have the power within all of us to lift each other up, to strengthen us, and to console us. A few moments of silence. In a moment, Eric Hazan, Dr. Horowitz, will lead us in the Ya'aleh, and if you're still davening, please do not hurry. The Ya'aleh in a moment will be on page 223. Ya'aleh means let our prayers ascend. The next word is v'yavo. Let a prayer come forth. V'yereh. Let a prayer be seen. What does that mean for a prayer to be seen? We might say, let a prayer be heard, and the word would be v'yi shama, like the word Shema. V'yereh. What does it mean for a prayer to be seen? I don't know what it means, but I know what it means for us to be seen. And if you and I are sincere in offering each his or her own prayers, then the prayer carries a little bit of us with that prayer upwards. Maybe that's what it means to be seen. You and I, individually, being part of the prayers we offer. Ya'aleh, page 223.
Ya'aleh tachanunenu me'erev v'yavo shavatenu miboker v'yavo shavatenu miboker v'yero erinunenu v'yero erinunenu v'yero erinunenu ad arev ad arev Ya'aleh koleinu me'erev v'yavad tzidkatenu miboker v'yeroeh pidyoneinu v'yeroeh pidyoneinu v'yeroeh pidyoneinu ad arev ad arev Ya'aleh inuyenu me'erev v'yavo slichatenu miboker v'yeroeh nakatenu v'yeroeh nakatenu v'yeroeh nakatenu ad arev ad arev.
On 226, prior to the 13 Midot, on the English side, the second short stanza in the center of the page. We approach your presence with supplication and prayer, and with the words you revealed to Moses, the humble one, long ago. Turn away from wrath and let us nestle under your wings, as it is written in your Torah about the day God descended in a cloud. Overlook sin, blot out guilt, as on the day God stood beside him. Hear our cry, attend to our plea, as on the day he called the name Adonai. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum, on page 226.
Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum v'Chanun, Erech Apayim, V'Rav Chesed v'Yemet, Notzer Chesed la'alafim, Nosei avon v'fesha v'chata v'nakeh. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum v'Chanun, Erech Apayim, V'Rav Chesed v'Yemet, Not נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע וחטאה ונקה. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum v'Chanun, Erech Apayim, v'Rav Chesed v'Yemet, Notzer Chesed la'alafim, Nosei Avon v'Fesha v'Chata'a v'Nahakeh. וסלחת לעווננו ולחטאתנו ונחלתנו. סלח לנו אבינו כי חטאנו מחלן מלכנו כי פשענו. כי אתה אדוני טוב וסלח ורב חסד לכל קוראיך.
A very famous poem, Kine Kachomer. It is as if we are the clay in the hand of the artisan. It's on page 227 in a moment. And just think of the metaphors before us as clay in the hand of the potter, as stone in the hand of the stonemason, as iron in the hand of the blacksmith, as glass in the hand of the one who works in glass. Each and every one of us is touched by the hand of God. Ki hine kachomer.
Ki hine kachomer beyad hayotzer, birtzoto marchiv birtzoto mekatzer, ken anachnu veyadcha chesed notzer, la brita beit v'al tefen la yetzer. Ki hine ka'even beyad hamasatet, birtzota ochez u'irtzota mechatet, ken anachnu veyadcha mechayeh u'memotet, la brita beit ve'al tefen la yetzer. Ki hine kagarzen beyad hecharash, birtzoto dibek laor u'birtzoto peirash, ken anachnu beyadcha tomech ani varash, la brita beit ve'al tefen la yetzer.
The English on page 231 near the bottom, the last two stanzas, a very famous poem written by a very famous Jewish Spanish mystic, Judah Halevi. Adonai, where shall I find you? High and hidden is your place, and where shall I not find you? The world is full of your glory. I sought your closeness. I called to you with all my heart, and going out to meet you, I found you coming toward me. O God, hear our voice as we all come forth to you. The Shema Kolenu in Hebrew and English on page 233. As the cantor offers the Hebrew, we will offer the English responsibly. On page 233, the upper stanza, there are 4 short lines beginning with Shema Kolenu, Hashivenu, Al Tashlichenu, and Al Tashlichenu, the top of 233.
Shema Koleinu, Adonai Eloheinu, Chus v'rachem aleinu, v'kabel b'rachamim u'ratzon et tefilateinu.
Hear our voice, Adonai, our God. Be kind and have compassion for us, willingly and lovingly. Accept our prayer.
Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha v'nashuva, Chadesh yameinu kekedem.
Turn us toward you, Adonai, and we will return to you. Make our days seem fresh as they once were.
Al tashlichenu milfanecha, v'ruach ברוח קודשך, אל תיקח ממנו.
Do not cast us away from you. Take not your holy presence from us.
אל תשליכנו לעת זקנה, ככלות כוחנו, אל תעזבנו.
Do not cast us away as we grow old. Do not desert us as our energy wanes. For we, O God, are your nation. We are part of you and you are part of us. A well-known poem set to melody, Ki Anu Amecha, on page 234.
כי אנו עמך ואתה אלוהינו, אנו בניך. כי אנו עמך ואתה אלוהינו, אנו בניך ואתה אבינו, אנו עבדיך ואתה אדוננו, אנו קהלך ואתה חלקנו, אנו נחלתך ואתה גורלנו, אנו צונך ואתה רוענו, אנו חרמך ואתה נוטרנו, אנו פעולתך ואתה יוצרנו, אנו רעייתך ואתה דודנו, אנו סגולתך ואתה קרבנו, אנו עמך ואתה מלכנו, אנו מאמירך ואתה מאמירנו.
In a moment, the well-known Ashamnu, and you know some people have a pattern of slightly tapping the chest. It's feeling our heartbeats. And when we know that we've done something wrong, our hearts are pained. And when we think of the ramifications of our behavior and how others carry pain as well, pain of the physical or pain of the emotional because of our actions and our behaviors. And thus, we feel that emerging from our heart upon our hands. And perhaps this year, because we're so sensitized in so many different ways, not being as close as we need to be, maybe when we feel the echoes of the pain caused by us and to us, reverberating into our fingertips, and we'll take our fingertips with us into the day past Yom Kippur and the rest of this year. Maybe our fingertips, our hands, will be more outreaching, more guided by love and compassion. If able to do so, you're asked to rise for the Ashamnu on page 235 and remain standing for just a moment thereafter for the Al-Chet as well.
Ashamnu bagadnu gazalnu dibarnu dofi Hevinu v'hirshanu zadnu chamasnu tafalnu sheker Yatsnu ra ki Azavenu, Latsenu, Maradenu, Niatsnu, Sararnu, Avinu, Pashanu, Tsararnu, Kishinu, Oref, Roshanu, Shichatanu, Tiavnu, Tainu, Titanu. Alachet shechatanu lefanecha b'yones uveratzon. V'alchet shechatanu lefanecha be'imut halev.
Page 237, remaining standing for the Al-Chet.
Alchet shechatanu lefanecha b'yetzer hara. V'alachet shechatanu lefanecha b'yodim uvelo yodim. V'yale kulam Eloha selichot, selach lahanu, mechalel lahanu, kaper lahanu.
Near the bottom of 237.
Al chet shechatanu lefanecha bechachash ubechachazav. V'al chet shechatanu lefanecha bechapat shochad. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha be'einayim ramot. V'al chet shechatanu lefanecha be'azut metzach. V'al kulam Eloha selichot, selach lahanu, mechalel lahanu, kaper lahanu.
We are seated. Turning now in the English to page 240. On page 240, you see the red refrain, Hu Ya'anenu. Aloud, please, on page 240. May the one who answered Sarah pass the time of her youth. Hu Ya'anenu, answer us. May the one who answered Abraham on Mount Moriah. Hu Ya'anenu, answer us. Isaac, their son, bound on the altar. Hu Ya'anenu, answer us. Rebekah, as her sons struggled within her. Hu Ya'anenu, answer us. May the one who answered Jacob at Beit El. Hu Ya'anenu, answer us. Leah in her loneliness. Hu Ya'anenu, answer us. Rachel, desperate for her child. Hu Ya'anenu, answer us. Yosef, abandoned in prison. Hu Ya'anenu, answer us. May the one who answered the Hebrew midwives as they stood at the birthing place. Hu Ya'anenu, answer us. Yocheved, mother of Moses, having faith on the bank of the Nile. Hu Ya'anenu, answer us. The people Israel on the shores of the sea. Hu Ya'anenu, answer us. Moses standing on the slopes of Sinai. Hu Ya'anenu, answer us. May the one who answered Miriam with her well of water. Hu Ya'anenu, answer us. Aaron offering incense to God. Hu Ya'anenu, answer us. Pinchas, seeking his place above the crowd. Hu Ya'anenu, answer us. May the one who answered, my favorite, of all of the personalities in the Torah, the 5 women, the 5 daughters of Tzlafchad, standing their ground. Hu ya'anenu, answer us. And those who are righteous, upright, decent, and compassionate, answer us. Hu ya'anenu, answer us. In just a moment, not yet, we'll be rising for the Avinu Malkeinu in a moment on page 243, but I wish to make a point. Avinu means our Father. And that echoes the word Eloheinu in every single prayer that we offer. Eloheinu, Melech HaOlam, our God. Jewish life is informed by the perspective that all of us share God. God is not owned or controlled or constrained or limited or only in the purview of one, but God is shared by all of us, which means that we are all equal in the eyes of God. And that comes forth in the term of Avinu, our Father. Malkeinu, on the other hand, Malkeinu means our sovereign, our complete leader, the one beyond all measure, beyond all power, all limits. So how do we stand in the presence of God? Perhaps Avinu Malkeinu is teaching us that on some occasions we are as close to God as a child and a parent. Hi God, let's talk. And yet on the other hand, we are just, each one of us, an individual in the presence of the Creator of all the universes beyond this one. So on those occasions when we're feeling like we can do no wrong, let's think of Malkeinu. And on those occasions when we feel low, perhaps alone and isolated, let's think of Avinu, closeness. Avinu Malkeinu, for which we rise. And in a moment, Eric Cantor will lead us in the 3 different little sections of the Avinu Malkeinu, the beginning, and then in the center of the page, and as he offers them in Hebrew, I'll respond in English, and then, of course, the well-known conclusion. The ark is open on page 243.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Ein lanu melech ela ata. Avinu Malkeinu, Aseh imanu leman shemecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Chadesh aleinu shana tova.
Avinu Malkeinu, forgive and pardon all our sins. Do not look toward our sins and transgressions, blot them out. Return us to your presence fully penitent. Send complete healing to the sick among your people. Avinu Malkeinu, remember us favorably.
Avinu Malkeinu, hachazirenu b'tshuva shlema lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, shalach refuah shlema lechol yamecha. Avinu Malkeinu, zochrenu b'zichron tov lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer chayim tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer gula v'yeshua. Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer parnasa v'chalkala. Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer zechuyot. Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer slicha u'mechila.
In a moment, the top of page 244, the last line.
La 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 da da. La 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 da da. La la da da here da 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 here da. Ah here da 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 di. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu, Ki ein banu masim. Aseh imanu, Tzedakah v'chesed. Aseh imanu tzedakah v'chesed v'hoshiyenu. Avinu malkeinu, choneinu vaneinu, ki ein banu masim. Aseh imanu tzedakah v'chesed. Aseh imanu tzedakah v'chesed v'hoshiyenu. Arai rai 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 rai. Arai rai 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 rai. Arai rai rai.
You may be seated. The Kaddish, the complete Kaddish on page 245. Kaddish.
Yitkadav yitkadav shemei rabba. Yalmad yirach yirutev yamlich malchutei v'chayechon u'yamechon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael v'agalav izman kariv imeru. Amen. Yesh me rabba mevorach le'alam olamei almayah. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalel shemei d'kudusha. B'richu le'yela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata tamiran b'alma v'imeru. Titkabal tzlatan uvotan d'chol Yisrael kodam avuhon d'vishmaya v'imeru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen. Oseh shalom pimramav. Uyaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen.
This year is like no other. And for that reason, I'm going to move to a different part of the service, then come back to the Aleinu, because I wish you to take hold of a thought that will hopefully remain with you for a number of minutes into this evening after the Aleinu and after the Mourner's Kaddish. It's on page 248 if you have the Machzor, and if not, I'll mention it aloud. It's about halfway down, and if you have the Machzor, you see the little red transliterated ink, Achat Sha'alte, which is one of my favorite verses from this psalm. This is a psalm recited leading up to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur and on until the middle of Sukkot. And the red ink is, one thing I ask, just to be this close to be in God's own house, to look upon God as if that's possible. And of course, it can be taken literally. But what does it mean to be in God's house? And then I look just a little bit down, about 3 or 4 short little lines, and we see, now I raise my head above the enemies that surround me. I raise my head above the enemies that surround me. And much of what we're experiencing in our beloved land these months could fall into that category of seeing enemies coming to and surrounding me. And this psalm, which we recite for 7 weeks leading up to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur and past Yom Kippur into Sukkot, is saying every single day, take a new perspective. Stand tall, elevate yourself, perhaps even symbolically climb a ladder and gain a new outlook. Do not allow yourself to see what you have been seeing these past months, wherein you see yourself as being entirely surrounded by enemies. Gain a new perspective for the days ahead. And perhaps that's why this psalm is here, to comfort me and to reassure all of us, to comfort you. This poem, written 3,000 years ago, could not have anticipated exactly what you and I are experiencing here in America as Americans these past months. But the poem, the poet, the composer, perhaps David himself, the one and only original David, said, understand that when you reach inside yourself, to go beyond yourself, to appreciate the Ein Sof, the limitless one, you have within you the capacity to lift yourself up and gain a new orientation, a new understanding, a new view. And that is one of the many prayers that I have for you as we are about to enter the fullness of Yom Kippur. Join me, please, in the Aleinu, for which we rise on page 246. After that, the Mourner's Kaddish. Aleinu on page 246.
Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon ha'kol, la'teit gedula li'atzeh bereshit, shelo asanu kagayei ha'aratzot, ve'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chalkenu kahem, ve'gahar aleinu kechol ha'monam, v'hanachnu korim, ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס ולטוב, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים, בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת עינו. כי המלכות שלך היא, ולעולמי עד תמלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Those inclined to remain standing for Kaddish, Mourner's Kaddish, are invited to do so. Others, if so comfortable, may be seated. And if you know of someone and you wish to include that person's name at this time, please do so aloud in your home as we mention the names here from the Shul Bima. Remembering at this season, Sidney Goldrich, Cassili Koppel, Laura Lapkin, Soretta Livitz, Rita Miller, Sophie Schechter, I, Harry Brook, Devorah Mary Yablonsky, Esther Novoselsky, Hyman Bronstein, Sylvia Goldberg, Eva Davidoff, Joyce Marcus, Millie Rosenblatt, Max Mishkin, Maurice L. Chassis, Jacob Perlman, Irving Spindle, Mary Hoffman, Mayor Mitchell, Michael Bronstein, Samuel Prince, Robert Handmaker, Lillian Rudnick, Murray Gollum, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Yitzgadal, V'Yitkadash, Shema, Rabba, Amen, Be'olma, Divra, Chirute, V'Yamlich, Malchute, B'chayechon, V'Yomechon, U'B'chaye, Dechol, Be'et Yisrael, Ba'agala, U'Vizman, Kariv, V'Meru, Amen. Yehei, Shmei, Rabba, Mivarach, La'olam, Olalmei, Olmaya. Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar, v'yitromam, v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar, v'yitaleh, v'yithalal, shmei, d'kudisha, brichu, la'ela min kol, birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran ba'alma, v'yimeru, amen. Yehei, shlama, rabba, min shemaya, v'chayim, Aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, v'yimeru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, v'yimeru, amen. To all who mourn, to all who grieve, our prayers for love and for hope. And remind yourselves that you're not alone. We will conclude in just a minute with the Yigdal on page 250, and I hope that people know the time for services tomorrow, 10 a.m. Central. We do have people from other communities joining in, and we are honored that you are joining us in strengthening our minyan beyond walls. So 10 a.m. to noon, local time, approximately, and yes, we will be doing Yizkor tomorrow during that service. And of course, the concluding service, 5:30 to 7, local time with shofar. And frankly, if you do not yet have the access code or the meeting ID for the Zoom healing service, I don't think I'm in a position to help you with that. I'm sorry. But we have been announcing it, and again, that's at 4:30 to 5:30 local time on Zoom, which is a departure from the YouTube. As far as everything else, I have a feeling most of you are not really interested in all the announcements, and they're in the bulletin. And thank you to Dr. Michael Cohen and Maddie for always helping us with the bulletin. And one more, thank you. Without David Smith, these past days, these past months, we would not have these services on the internet, on YouTube and on our website, and a special video that he helped me prepare for our children. Without David, none of this would happen. And we are grateful that David is so devoted to Congregation Ahavas Chesed. And now, Yigdal, as I said, only twice during the year is this very special lofty melody, and elegant melody offered. It's on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Yigdal, thank you, Dr. Cantor. Howard Horowitz, page 250.
Yigdal Elohim Chai v'yishtabach nimtza v'yenet el metziuto echad v'yen yachid ki yichudo ne'elam v'gam ein sof li'achduto ein lo demut haguf yein haguf lo naroch elav kedushato kadmon lechol davar asher nivra rishon v'yein reshit l'reshito Hino Adon Olam v'chol notzar Yoreh gedulato u'malchuto Shefa nevuato netano el Anshe segulato v'tifarto Lo kam b'Yisrael kemo she'od Navi umabit et temunato. Taharat emet natan leyam ha'el, al yad neviah neman beito. Lo yachalifa velo yamir data, le'alamim lezulato. Tzofer v'yodea setarenu, mahabit lesof davar bekad mahato. Gomer leish chesed kemifala, noten l'rashara kerishato. Yishlach leketz yamin meshichenu, liftot mechai ketz yeshuato. Meitim yechayel beroch hasto, Baruch Adayad Shem Tehilato.
May all of you be signed, inscribed, and sealed in the book of life and good health and peace for you and all your loved ones. And may this be a good and sweet year for all of us. Until tomorrow,